let's say, things that they couldn't anticipate. For example, the failure to warn type lawsuits that many of them end up being. They are someone didn't like the way a warning was placed in the label in the package insert.
Well,
so there are lots of reasons.
No,
let's not
talk about.
Charles. Hold on, let me finish for a second. Put it in context, Charles. If there wasn't a social good to these companies, and if they didn't have strong financial capabilities, we couldn't call on them to do what they're trying to do now, as imperfect as it is, because none of this is perfect. And throwing money at science doesn't make guarantee of success.
Doc,
but I mean, if we had this dilemma and we didn't call on NIH, we didn't call on scientists and universities, we called on the pharmaceutical industry, because that's what they did. Similar to what we saw with the HIV pandemic way back. GSK, which is a UK firm, came out with one of the first antiretrovirals, and they made some dumb mistakes in how they positioned the drug and how they priced the drug and what they said about it. But the fact of the matter is, they took fundamental technology and made a product out of it, a safe product that saved tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives, and was the first in a chain of successes where now, as you know, HIV is a very manageable and even preventable condition. But that first step was taken by a pharmaceutical company, and they got sued a lot.
Wait a minute, and profitable. So they could come up with a cure. Okay. So they could come up with medications to stop HIV, which is transmitted by initially through homosexual behavior. And now we find that, but they can't come up with a cure for cancer. I think if researchers,
no, I think they're wrong. We have cancer is in one condition, Charles. It's not. There are as many kinds of cancers as there are cells in our body, because cancer is just sort of a catch-all phrase like stomachache, or something like that, or a skin rash. It's a catch-all phrase lay folks use, but every single different type of cell in the body can become cancerous.
Okay, so
since every different type of cell, skin cell, nerve cell, blood cell, bone cell, you name it, prostate cancer cell for the guys, breast cancer cell, they're all different. They all have to be approached in different ways. But there has been a lot of progress.
But Doc, at the end of the day, there are too many people out there who, whenever they talk about cancer research and they come up with breakthroughs, they're suppressed. And I contend, and I will continue to contend, it's because of the money involved in selling the medications. So Donald Trump comes out, and Donald Trump goes after what? Pricing drugs. Who comes after him? Pharma. They're pumping big money into Joe Biden's campaign. They're pumping billions of dollars into Joe Biden's campaign through various PACs. Why? Because they know that Trump is going to come after them and make them lower their profits. When Trump created the White House Business Roundtable, he told the CEOs, you're making way too much money. Why are you making $30 million a year for sitting behind a chair? Why are you making?
I'm not at all surprised to hear that. That was similar to what President Obama did, and we'll hear more of it under President Biden. And it is a general rule that.
But those guys
Democratic administrations favor medical care providers and medical product suppliers. It's been an axiomatic since Medicare was first conceptualized way back when I had curly brown hair. That's always the case. Yet there is, and many in pharma were kind of surprised at the executive order, which looked at trying to control pharmaceutical prices through the most favored nation clause, because that is a form of price control which Men's Health Network, which I am representing in our discussion today, an advocacy group for the health of men and boys and their families, we did not support that. We did support the programs, the executive orders, I should say, that were designed to bring production of pharmaceuticals back into the United States, fully understanding that that may indeed increase the price of drugs a little bit, because it costs an awful lot more to support a worker in the United States or European Union than it does in places where we wouldn't drink the tap water, like China or India.
This is the problem. This is the problem with these people. And this is why I think they need to be taken, they need to be put in jail. They need to be jailed, and they need to be jailed right now. I don't care that they went to Harvard or Yale, or they have an MBA. They need to be jailed. These people are criminal. Anybody that's manufacturing drugs in China and India, the thing about manufacturing drugs in China and India is that they have no controls. We don't know what the hell these people are putting in our drugs. They're putting when they do an analysis, they're finding all kinds of fake and pseudo crap in these drugs that should not be there. And these damn executives, these executives need to be arrested. They need to go to prison, and they need to be fined, and they need to be treated just like drug dealers when they secure all their assets and all the assets that they've gained from this kind of from that behavior. So, but they're not going to do that because of what? Campaign contributions. Campaign contributions.
Well, I don't think you see the U.S. pharma companies and most of the European Union pharma companies, the ones that have very rigorous controls, supporting the notion of medications made in China, India, former Soviet Republic, Latin America, places where they don't have good regulation, or they flaunt it, or they simply lie about it, and we can't trust them. I think that's a whole different thing. That, I believe, my take on it, after doing this for about 45 years, boy, I'm an old guy. After doing this for about 45 years, it's really the insurance companies and the pharmacy benefit management companies who have taken life-saving drugs for mom's hypertension, dad's diabetes, your son's seizure disorder, your loved one's, name it,
right?
And decided that these should be commoditized as we commoditize a can of peas or dog food, and they have made decisions about what will be purchased. And I do fear, by the way, talking about the principal topic, vaccines, that some of the decisions about what vaccines will be distributed to United States citizens may be made based on sole price. And don't forget, it's not just AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Sanofi, and some of the other, Moderna, some of the other U.S. and European regulated companies that are creating vaccines. They are also being created from companies and entities in Russia, in China, and other places, I think, are coming on board too. I've seen some, in Mexico. So I think we have to be very, very diligent about it. And everything is just sort of a balancing off the trade-offs, Charles. And I think one of the trade-offs here is what do we expect, and how safe do we want these things to be? And will we allow insurance companies or PBMs to decide where our vaccines are going to come from? I don't know how many of your listeners have gotten flu vaccine, but have they ever asked where the flu vaccine they've received this year or past years has come from? I don't know that all of it's been American-made or European-made stuff. I don't know that at all.
And that's the problem. And that's the problem. Therein lies the problem.
Yep, just one of many.
Oh, man.
And for me, I will say that I am very fortunate that I understand this. It's what I've been doing a long time, and I'm very, very involved. The Men's Health Network is very, very engaged in making sure that men and boys and their families get safe medicines at reasonable prices. But, the average, I have been having this debate with a bunch of folks I talk with that are Wall Street analyst type folks. And I reminded them that they have no way of knowing, because they're debating too whether they'll get the vaccine, and they follow this stuff like crazy because they got big money riding on this. And I remind them that they have no control.
They do have big money riding on it.
They're going to get.
They do have big money riding on it. But the problem
They do
is,
indeed, sir.
I think one of the problems is that we have people in government and we have people in business today who stop putting America first. They start putting profit first. And see,
Yeah.
this didn't start until Milton Friedman, and Milton takes credit for this, and he said he was wrong. Milton Friedman
Yes.
Milton Friedman said you should manage for the benefit of the shareholder, and that changed the whole dynamic of American business and industry management here in this country in the 70s. It's people have since said, and Milton has said, "Hey, I was wrong. I've destroyed a good thing here because corporations used to be good corporate citizens. The steel plants in Pittsburgh, they contributed to the communities. They had great football programs. They had great schools. In Detroit, we had great schools, great football. We had equipment. We had music instruments. We had everything. That all stopped because of Milton Friedman and manage to the benefit of the share. Remember Jamie Dimon? See, this is how slick things are. Jamie Dimon came out.
Remember that name.
Jamie Dimon came out about right before this pandemic hit, probably right shortly after the first of the year. And he said, we are going to manage to the benefit of our citizens and America, not the shareholder. Nobody, people in the business world kind of panic, but that was not carried anywhere. Why? Because the corporations own all the news media. Just like
yes,
when
they do.
Just like when
that's very true. Bezos owns Washington Post. New York Times is a huge, active corporate entity that relies on advertising for its very existence, and their star journalists' incomes and salaries. So, yeah, I do think you're correct that we had a history in this country up until the late 80s, late 70s, early 80s of corporations looking out for individuals. I think after the 1932 and the era of the meatpacking plants that Sinclair Lewis exposed in his writings and others were very concerned about, after that kind of eased off, you did have companies that were very paternalistic in the 50s through the mid 70s, and that all changed. I think you're right, because the mantra was we have an obligation, a fiduciary obligation to our shareholders to maximize profit. And I think that, by the way, I'm not sure, but and this is an editorial opinion, my opinion is that was driven by something we spoke about earlier, a culture of litigation, which attorneys decided that there was a basis to sue corporations for not fulfilling some esteemed financial or fiduciary obligation to shareholders. So they grabbed a hold of it, and they pushed the agenda to the point where a company somewhat became concerned, and this was taught in business schools.
So you saying that Ralph Nader started this? So you saying that Ralph Nader started? Are you saying that Ralph Nader started this with his lawsuit against General Motors? That was a big famous lawsuit.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's wrong. Safe at any speed, unsafe at any speed. No, I'm not saying it's wrong at all. Again, I'm a firm believer in trust with verification, but I do think that, as with so many things, the pendulum has and is still on the side of litigation, and that responsibility has primacy for a profit-making entity. Estimating companies because they fail to maximize, a bit of panic. So, like so much of history, pendulums swing one way and then another way, and where we end up should be in the middle, the antithesis, the sum of the two. But I do think that there are many, many issues we face that are reflected in how we're addressing this whole COVID concern. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just
Did I lose
thinking.
you?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thinking.
Sorry.
You're talking about the COVID concern, but I'm saying I don't believe one that we can trust the healthcare companies. If you remember when President Obama took office, his first two meetings were with they were with pharma, and then the next group he met with was he met with the health care insurers first, and then he met with
Right.
pharma second, and they sold this country out. And when you have a Donald Trump coming along saying, "Hey, guess what? You're making too much profit, and you're not paying these workers enough," and I mean, the take that because Donald's a businessman, I guess. I mean, this guy has really put Washington on its heels because he's not a politician. He's not looking for money. Like right now, he's behind in fundraising, and he's cool. He doesn't care. I mean, he's just kind of going along, and but he's a business guy. He's a businessman.
Yes, he is.
And he understands, and these people know that he understands. When he was campaigning, he said, "I'm going to put business people in to negotiate good trade agreements. I'm going to bring my guys in, and we're going to have good trade agreements. We're not going to have the everybody knows that NAFTA was a bad deal. I will never, as long as I live, forget Bob Dole, who was the Senate minority leader at the time, come to the podium and do a news conference and said NAFTA. All he said was NAFTA is a bad deal for the American worker, and he turned around and he walked away.
Yes.
And he looked so defeated.
Yeah. Biden was on the other side of that.
He looked like a vet that had lost a battle to the Japanese or to the Germans. He looked so defeated. And I'm thinking here's a guy who's seen combat. Here's a guy who's been through a lot of stuff, and he is just so disgusted with this bill. And you got Joe Biden running around giddy. Oh, we're gonna make Mexicans are gonna have a better quality of life because we're doing business with them, and the Chinese they won't be peasants. Well, the bottom line is the average Chinese worker is still making $1 to $3 a day. That's why these Chinese workers are leaving the factories and going back to their farms. And nobody really wants to talk about that.
Yeah, I agree with that it was a very bad deal. And in fact, as earlier conversation about the movement of drug manufacturing offshore, a lot of that it wasn't really NAFTA, but it was the NAFTA mentality of globalism that has somehow also pervaded a lot of thinking in liberal universities, including liberal business schools. And if you look at the top business schools in the country, they are generally housed in liberal universities. So you've got to think about the implications of that as well, not just for now, but for the future of business. So I think that the whole notion of globalism is good and nationalism is bad is not playing out very well to the advantage of the American public. It also has bearing on what we were talking about earlier, I believe, Charles, which is that the companies of the 50s were very paternalistic, and they had people sticking around for a long time, and they wanted the companies to not only be successful but also be ethical. And you just don't see that now, where the culture is moved from company to company to company, and it's kind of, if you don't have a new job at a new company every 3 years, you're a slacker or you're a failure. So I do think that has a lot of bearing on the corporate culture. And again, that's why I also think that this lack of institutional ethics or institutional conscience, which is what you have when you have loyalties, the long-term success of an organization, has been corrupted by this pressure on the first right is to the first responsibilities are to the shareholders. Merck was famous for, and I think still to a great extent, Merck, the pharmaceutical giant company, was famous for saying that one of their tenets was that we do science for people, and I think that they work very hard to keep that image up. It's been a little tarnished lately, but I still think they try very hard for that.
Globalization has not been good for the American worker, good for the American people.
No.
And the first person to really say that and come out and push that has been President Trump. Before that, you had Democrats and Republicans alike talking about selling the if you weren't a globalist, then you were a xenophobe, being protectionist. When people are going hungry here in America, we have a lot of issues to deal with here in this country, and it starts with dealing with Americans and Americans first. Off immigration, both legal and illegal. We have enough people here in this damn country who need to pursue the damn American dream without bringing more people in here to compete with them.
Yeah, I agree too. It's a little far from but as an individual, an American citizen, I do, and as someone who actually was forced to study this kind of thing in my undergraduate degree, at that good liberal university, Columbia University, there were times in American history early on where immigration was capacity control. And they did look very carefully at the credentials and the ability for individuals coming into the country as permanent residents to contribute to the overall growth and success of the country, which is a business person's, perspective. I mean, when you hire someone into your business, you expect them to be a contributor to your business and not just someone who's going to take up a cubicle, an office, or a spot on the manufacturing line. You have approached the things, which I think made America unique. We have to put our own citizens at the head of the line for what we do. And I think that's a very reasonable approach. So that's I think a very paternalistic, a very good view, but it was heavily criticized by people on the left as being short-sighted or unethical or xenophobic, as opposed to helpful to the Americans first, and then once we're strong and on our way to recovery from this thing, both health-wise and financially wise.
Well, I think that the government has always bitten off more than it can chew, and it's resulted in my opinion, it's resulted in Americans being left out in the cold. I look back at the immigration in this country in the 1880s through the 1920s when we stopped immigration. The people who were displaced and the people whose ability to pursue the American dream were the Black Americans. So when you bring all these immigrants in, would otherwise, and the opportunities that would otherwise have gone to citizens who were already here, i.e. white and Black citizens. So when you had all these people come over from Europe, they didn't do anything but push Black people further down the ladder, because you had things like that were specifically put in place by the government to keep Black Americans out of jobs, like the Davis-Bacon Act, one of the most racist pieces of legislation ever passed. And nobody ever talks about that. The Davis-Bacon.
I'm not familiar with that act at all.
Well, the Davis-Bacon Act is called the Prevailing Wage Act. The Prevailing Wage Act means that it were unions, basically. So if you weren't in the union and getting prevailing wage, then you couldn't be hired. So Blacks were excluded from trade unions. Today, Blacks are still excluded from trade unions. In fact, the whole affirmative action push and the affirmative action strategy was to integrate trade unions, i.e. plumbers, carpenters, electricians. All of those unions are still heavily white and exclude Black Americans. They're excluded from the internship programs, the apprentice programs, and all of those things.
That's awful. It's a shame. I wasn't aware of that.
Well, yeah, and
Thank you for letting me know that.
it still goes on today. So, don't talk to me about some goddamn social program. Talk to me about putting these kids in an electrician apprenticeship or a plumbing apprenticeship or some of but blacks have historically been denied those opportunities. While when immigrants came here, they made less money than the blacks initially, but then that group became white.
Yeah.
Those kids became white. Okay, so the children of those immigrants became white. They were no longer Italian. They were Americans. They were Brooklyn Nice. They were Queens. They were Americans. They assimilated. And it steadily pushed black workers down the socioeconomic ladder. So when you look at Philadelphia and New York, which had been really the center of black migration before the Great Migration and blacks moving up to Chicago and Detroit, you saw a concentration of basically people who came in and worked it, like in New York. My relatives worked in the garment district and for the government. So, when I graduated from college in 1975, you could be a doctor, lawyer, preacher, teacher, or you could work for a government organization. Like you could be a cop, or you could get a
Very
job.
true.
You could be, but General Motors didn't hire black executives. General Motors didn't hire black guys to be managers. General Motors didn't, and Ford and all those companies, Xerox and all, they didn't hire black people. So IBM, they didn't hire black people. So, just like today, the tech companies don't hire black people. And so they go, well, why aren't they hiring black people? Because they don't have to. They'd rather go out and bring people in from India than to give any American, regardless of their race today, than to give any American opportunity. They'll go out and get a guy from India or Bangladesh because they can pay him 40 grand instead of 70 grand.
That. I never understood. Well, I'm
gonna tell you right now.
I think that's been homogenized. They are considered now, when you talk about the Honecker people of color, folks from India and other, Latin
we don't consider them
people of color.
We don't consider them.
Rather than helping,
we don't consider them people of color.
I think it's a bad strategy.
We don't consider them people of color, and see, and this is the thing.
Politics.
Well, this is but this is the thing. Yeah, but they always have. I don't consider Latinos disadvantaged. Latinos have never been denied jobs. When they fought in World War II, they didn't fight in separate units. They fought with white boys. When they flew, you had Mexican American pilots. They've always been considered white. They didn't march in the civil rights movement because why? They weren't discriminated against. When they say whites and colors, where did the Hispanics go or Latinos go? They went to the white restroom. They drank at the white fountain. They sat in the white railroad cars. So no, that's just bullshit. I always say they perpetrating. And all these people they got over here, these poor ignorant people that they've imported into America. I mean, how do you double the Latino population in 20 years? From 2000 to 2020, the Latino population has doubled in America. How in the hell does that happen?
And it's going to increase.
How in
the
hell does that happen if people aren't here illegally?
Not under this administration, but I think under prior administrations, either there was a blind eye and no real effort to immigration control.
What it was one of the new group of underclass. And so, you look at the underclass. When we look at underclass, let's look at bilingual education. The guy who pushed bilingual education, the Hispanic guy, Latino guy who pushed it, said he made a mistake. See, everybody wants to come out with their own new stuff, but the new stuff never works. The old stuff works. Learn English, learn reading, writing, arithmetic. Don't try to teach my kid about putting a condom on a damn banana or that he can be a girl if he wants to. I mean, really? Who can see? That's how see, in my opinion, when we took God out of the schools, when we took right and wrong out of the schools, when we took logic and tradition out of our schools and out of the country, all of a sudden Thanksgiving is a bad thing. Well, yeah, we could look at it that way, but the Indians saved the white folks because they were going hungry, and
Yeah,
yeah,
that was part of the traditional.
and yeah, they
That was
got it,
part of the traditional
and
Thanksgiving.
yeah, eventually they got a raw deal, but at the end of the day, we made things right. I mean, America, yeah, we made a lot of wrong steps, but we made a lot of right steps. That's my whole pitch, man.
Well, nobody except the great creator is perfect.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hey, well,
So you
Doc,
have to be
look,
cut people a little slack.
I'm going to ask you real quick. How do you want to end this thing?
How do I want to end the discussion, or how would I like to end
How do you want
the
to
COVID pandemic?
How do you want to end the COVID pandemic? Hit that real quick.
Vaccination. I know this is controversial, but I am a firm believer in vaccinations. I think we have to recognize that we still would be dealing with the ravages of polio, which you and I well remember as children.
Oh yeah, I do.
The ravages of pox, ravages of measles, which is not a totally benign, little piddly sort of viral infection. The ravages of HIV. I think vaccination is the only way to do it, because as one of my very esteemed colleagues who is much brighter than I in the area of infectious disease said, listen, Sal, the virus is here. We have to learn how to live with it, because it's here and it's not going to disappear from the face of the planet. It's going to be either a continued problem that we manage, or it's going to be something that wipes us out the way the Aztecs were wiped out, or other indigenous populations were wiped out when a virus took them over.
Yeah.
So I think how to end that, and really isn't ending it, how to bring it to closure, is vaccination. And that's why I'm so very concerned about some of the dramatic misinformation that's out there, that's going to hurt the way people make a decision on whether to become vaccinated or not.
Well, I'm telling you right now, I'm not.
Well, yeah. See, you got somebody right on the other side of the line who's going to go out and be vaccinated.
Good.
And I think that's one of the nice things about America we're losing. You have that right, Charles, to not be vaccinated. I think there are other things that maybe you may have to, compromise on: international travel, certain other things, for example.
Hey.
But I think that
hey, Doc.
If you decide to do something, you have to be responsible. Like we teach our kids when we're young. Every decision you make has responsibility.
Hey, Doc.
So, yeah, I think that if you don't want to be vaccinated, that's great. My prayers are that 50 to 60% of the American public do get vaccinated.
Hey, Doc, it won't happen.
So that we can reach that.
Doc, it won't happen because
don't think so?
Because we don't trust doctors. I don't trust doctors. I had a doctor perform an operation on me when I was 17 years old, and he's an intelligent man. He told my mother and I, well, Charles has this narrowing of the urethra, of the tube going into his urethra, but he wouldn't need an operation until he. Now I'm 68 now, right? This man operated on me when I was 17 years old because my mother said I might not have insurance to pay for the operation when I got 65. That's how she made her decision. I thought that was a bad decision.
How sweet.
No, it wasn't sweet. It was a stupid decision, but it was based on the information that she had. She's not an intelligent person. I mean, she's not a learned person. I mean, she's a lay person. But this son of a bitch cut me open. I'm 17 years old, cut me open, got his fee, paid his mortgage, paid his car note, paid his kids' tuition on cutting me the fuck open.
Well, I always would tell patients when I was dealing with them, and the medications, of course, that, surgeons get paid to cut. So you always get two opinions from two different surgeons. You get two opinions from two medical people, and then you contrast and compare. You can make an informed decision. But a lot of people, it's all Greek to them when these folks talk.
Man, listen. When you live in a town,
and that's a shame.
When you live in a town like when you live in Detroit, where you have good medical care, you have great medical programs, great insurance programs, these doctors are making a damn killing. They're making a goddamn fortune.
Yeah.
You're talking
came through a government program called Medicare.
I ain't talking about, I'm not talking about that bullshit. I'm talking about General Motors, Ford, Chrysler insurance. I'm talking about real insurance, man. I'm talking about insurance that pays. I ain't talking about no government bullshit. I'm talking about real insurance. And these doctors have made fortunes. They live like kings. That's when the money started flowing into medicine. I remember when doctors lived in our neighborhoods. I mean, they didn't make a lot of money. They had a lot of prestige. Right. They had a lot of
watching Dobie Gillis the other day.
Well, they had a lot of prestige.
Remember Dobie Gillis?
Yeah, but they had a lot of prestige. My point is,
and a doctor there made it $3 for a house call.
My point is, they had a lot of prestige because of their profession, but they didn't make a lot of money. It's like when I became a naval officer, I was only making $7,000 a year, where my lowest offer in the civilian world was $15,000, but the prestige was I was a naval officer. The mystique of being a naval officer and wearing a naval uniform, that was the big equalizer supposedly, but and it paid off in the long run. But the bottom line is, medicine and doctors started making a lot of money in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and then the government stepped in and they started socializing medicine because of your friend. No, not your friend, but Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy started pushing for socialized medicine.
Yes, and I think that was, when we look back with the virtue of hindsight, we see some of the bad decisions that were made along the way. It was a noble idea. No one should lack for good quality health care in America. But I think underlying that was, again, this whole notion of taking financial care of your friends. And quite frankly, the Democrats, as I said earlier in the program, are medical suppliers and medical product suppliers and medical practitioners have always done well or better under Democratic administrations than they have under Republican administrations, going way back when. I think preceding, even before Kennedy. Really.
Hey, well, look, Doc, this has been a great, robust conversation. Appreciate you, man. We'll have to do this again soon, okay?
Anytime you'd like to have me back on, I enjoyed the conversation and I learned several new things from you, Charles.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sal. Appreciate you too. Love you, man. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And think about a vaccine, sir.
I will, sir. Thank you. Hey, folks, we'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same place. Doing what we do here at Red State Talk Radio and The Reality Check with Charles Butler. Listen to me. See that sister, her shop was